Ever wondered what makes TV so powerful in Jamaica? Time to find out. Welcome to Global TV Group 358, where television meets innovation. We're not just about shows, we're about shaping society. In Jamaica, TV keeps you informed, connects diverse voices, and supports democracy. Imagine a Jamaica where broadcasters unite, sharing data and collaborating globally. That's us, a unified voice in the TV industry. Did you know TV advertising is still king? It drives website traffic, boosts brand equity, and powers integrated campaigns. Even in an age of digital, TV stands strong, resilient in tough times. Our global TV deck is your treasure trove of insights and data. With charts, graphs, and success stories, it's your guide to impactful TV advertising. Curious to learn more? Visit our website and see how Global TV Group 358 keeps television at the heart of entertainment in Jamaica. Get ready to binge watch the future.
Good evening, and welcome. Thank you for joining us for it's a late notification. We're just here to rebroadcast the People's National Party's press conference. I'm still waiting for them to come into the room. The link is already live over there, but we are waiting for them to come into the room. As soon as they come into the room, we will shut up and let them say what they have to say. Can you hear me, everyone? Just checking my audio. Can you hear me well? We are just out here to bring the People's National Party press conference to you. So as soon as, okay, thank you. As soon as we will go quiet and let them bring the information to you. Welcome, everyone. At a short notice, we are monitoring what is happening, whether it be on their YouTube or TikTok, their YouTube or Facebook. Nothing has started yet, even though the link has come live. But as soon as they join the room, we will certainly bring the press conference to you. Globalists, I was tired, and then I had to go on the street this morning to do bits and pieces. So me just honestly getting back into the house. I want my moderator send me a message to say the People's National Party will be having a press conference 11 o'clock this morning, which, come on, People's National Party, you're half hour late. You ought to have been in the room already, but nothing is coming from their end, whether it be on YouTube or Facebook. but we'll continue to wait. Maybe it's their technology issues
Good morning, everyone.
in the
Good
background.
morning to all of you here, and good morning to
Oh,
those
they've
who are
just come
listening
live.
online and from the
Hold on.
diaspora. So, the elections are on us. What an exciting period it has been. I want to introduce the other persons who are here with me today. To my right is Raymond Price, who is a campaign spokesperson. To my far left is Cleveland Tomlinson, who is also a campaign spokesperson. And to my immediate left is Julian Robinson, who, as you know, is for this moment, for a short time longer, the opposition spokesperson on finance. He's our main guest, and he will be breaking down the financial implications of our proposals. We have presented to you a manifesto that sets out a clear roadmap to modernize Jamaica's economy, strengthen social services, and build a fairer society where every citizen has opportunities to succeed. Rather than growth for few, it promotes inclusive economic development, supporting small business, encouraging innovation, and investing in sustainable industries like renewable energy and technology.
Share
But
the live,
most
my people. Share
importantly,
the live,
it is a
please.
manifesto wrapped in love, in social justice, in equality. It is a manifesto that places Jamaicans at the heart of everything that we do. I use the word Jamaicans in our context because this morning, children woke up asking their parents,
Who am I?
am I a Jamaican, mommy? Am I a Jamaican daddy? Adults went to bed last night confused as to what exactly the Prime Minister meant when he said you can be born here and not a Jamaican. This is the most concerning word, the most concerning statement that came out of that debate when you watched your leader, the leader of the country, throw shade, throw dirt in the face of every Jamaican who values this country of their birth. The most important thing to all of us is to be able to say, I'm an Banya, I'm an Anya, just proudly declaring that we are Jamaicans. For this reason, it even highlights more the fact that our leader, Mark Golding, Marky G, presented his birth certificate and showed everywhere, all over the world, that he was born in Jamaica, shattering the myth on which the Jamaica Labour Party has framed its campaign, a campaign which is embedded in racial hostility, which defies our motto out of one people, and which is in the slap of the face of every well-thinking Jamaican. I am a Jamaican. I am born here. I value it. And I will not make the words of one person try to strip me of my identity. So we have 4 days of campaigning left. Today, police, soldiers, and election day workers are voting. And some concerns have arisen, which I will ask Raymond to address.
Thank you very much, Donna, and good morning to everybody viewing and listening. Now, we place it as a grave concern, nothing deeper than that just yet. The reports across the island of bomb threats, which have caused a great strain on the security forces, must be contemplated as a possible ploy to disrupt the smooth voting process for police officers, soldiers, and election day workers, among others. one wonders if this is a coordinated attempt to suppress votes. Our men and women of our security forces, our first responders, are dedicated professionals who will always respond to protect and reassure. They too, as citizens of Jamaica and on the voters list, have a right to exercise their franchise. And it would be a new departure and a new low were it to one day be revealed that, as TVJ now reports, there appears to be a coordinated bomb threat at several PICA and other government offices across the island. The Jamaica Fire Brigade told TVJ, Radio Jamaica News, that there are bomb scares rather, at PICA offices in the corporate area, Montego Bay, Mandeville, Maypen, and Port Antonio. The Commissioner of the Fire Services, Stuart Beckford, told their news center that other government offices, including the Ministry of Local Government, the UDC on Ocean Boulevard, JAMPRO, and the National Housing Trust, are also affected. We would call upon well-thinking citizens to abhor this development, and we extend our prayers and our support to the men and women of the security forces who will, as I said earlier, always respond to protect and reassure.
Thank you, Raymond. Julia, did you want to say something on that score?
I just want to encourage the members of the security forces to remain patient. You will be able to vote. Some of you have to go to respond to these threats, which appear to be coordinated hoaxes. But there's an assurance that you will be able to exercise your franchise today. So I don't want anyone to be this confusion, this deliberate attempt to create confusion, to deter anybody today from exercising their right to go out and vote.
And I really want to frankly add my thanks to the members of the security forces, knowing that they serve and protect. We respect these sacrifices which they make, but we also know that Jamaicans are resolute about exercising their franchise. And I encourage everybody who is listening today to remember that on September 3rd, do not let anything stop you from going out to vote. You must vote. And voting for Jamaica and Jamaicans, those of us who born here, with our birth certificates in our hand, means you are to put your X beside the head. So, Julian, we can come back to the press conference last night because this is really an interactive session. We're talking to each other. We're talking to you. We want a conversation. There has been much criticism about the PNP's 3.5 million tax plan. In fact, when I watched Minister Favour Williams, who was supposed to be the person, or the main person at that finance debate, and she says her response to it was lies, 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 scam. It brought back some memories of how the discussions had emerged. We had actually been calling for an increase in the threshold for some time. And we had, in fact, increased the threshold before.
Twice
Twice
on
before we had
yeah,
done
when the
that.
PNP was in office.
So tell the people of Jamaica and the diaspora how it is that the PNP will fund this tax.
Thank you
package.
very much, Donna. And good morning to Jamaicans, both here and in the diaspora. I want to reiterate our commitment to implement the increase in the threshold to 3.5 million as of April 1st, 2026. The main reason we're doing this is to ensure that Jamaicans, working Jamaicans, or teachers, or policemen, or soldiers, security guards, those who have borne the brunt of the struggle over the last 15 years to pay down the debt, and that has contracted spending from the government, to give a relief to them, to ease the cost of living crisis that many face. Many working Jamaicans, people who are going to work every day and are only able to cover their transportation and their lunch. There's nothing left. So we feel committed to ensuring that more of working Jamaicans have more money in their pockets so that they can support their families. And that, in fact, will help to grow the economy. Now, much has been said about how we plan to fund this. The, the country had established a debt to GDP target of 60% by the year 2028, 2029, which we were on track to hit in 2 years' time. Based on a revision in how GDP is calculated, the figure before this was 68%. However, it has now been revised down to 62%. So I heard the Prime Minister yesterday speaking about 65. He's incorrect. And this has been confirmed by the Fiscal Commissioner in his release that we are now at 62.4%. And based on the projected down payment in debt, we will get to the 60% target by the end of this fiscal year, which is March 31st, 2026. What that does for the economy is that it frees up fiscal space for us to spend resources in critical areas that we deem to be priorities. Our calculation is that we will be able to spend an additional 2% of GDP, and our calculation of GDP, 1% is $35 billion. So this hitting the target of 60% frees up approximately $70 billion, which is more than enough to allow us to implement the increase in the threshold. So for those persons who are concerned that we cannot find the resources to fund it, the space is there to do so. It doesn't mean that we're going to stop paying our debt. We still have debt to pay, and we will still make the provisions in what is called our primary balance, which is the difference between what government earns and what government spends. We will still ensure there is enough to pay down that debt, to be fiscally responsible, and to honor all our obligations. But we have deemed it a priority to ensure that working Jamaicans get an opportunity where the pressure that they have absorbed over the last 10, 15 years is eased and they get a break. And that is why we remain committed to implementing this plan, and we will do so starting April 1st, 2026. I'm going to ask Cleveland to do a comparison between what we have proposed and what the JLP has proposed in their income tax reduction plan.
Thank you, Julian. And before I get into the comparison, I want it to be clearly established how we have arrived at the additional fiscal space that will be created to finance our adjustment to the income tax threshold. I have here in my hand the fifth schedule of the Financial Administration and Audit Act, which is a law that governs public finances to ensure fiscal responsibility. This section of the Act was put into law by the last PNP government in 2014. What it is in essence, is an equation that determines what the primary balance should be each year for us to hit the 60% debt to GDP target. We had established it in law and it was extended. The timeline we had established 2025, 2026, it was extended because of COVID, and the PNP supported it at the time because we understood the necessities. Given what Julian has expressed with respect to the recalibration of GDP, the debt to GDP ratio is now at 62.4%, which means if you plug in all the variables, in this equation, it will tell you that you can reduce the primary balance because you are now almost there with respect to meeting the 60% target. It is expected that we'll hit that target by the end of the current fiscal year, which will end March 2026. It is in the release provided by the Fiscal Commissioner. So if we will hit the target, it means that we can, by this very equation, reduce the primary balance. In the government's fiscal policy paper, the projected primary balance for next fiscal year is 3.7%. And that is predicated on last GDP, the debt to GDP figure of 68%. So since the recalibration, and we're expected to hit the 60% by March 2026, it means that we can reduce the primary balance by around 2%. And a reduction of the primary balance by around 2% frees up money, the fiscal space Julian was referring to the tune of around $70 billion. So our adjustment to the income tax threshold can be comfortably funded within a year.
So, Cleveland, what does this mean for the average person? The police
Absolutely.
who will be voting today, the teachers who are in the midst of their negotiations, the nurses. How translate to me what difference this will make in their lives?
Absolutely. And I've seen a narrative out there that says our policy will only benefit persons who earn up to $3.5 million. That is nonsense. If anyone who understands what the income tax threshold is, when we adjust the income tax threshold, it means that the first $3.5 million of your salary is not subjected to income tax. Any income earned above the 3.5 million is subjected to income tax. So if you earn above 3.5 million, it means that a lesser amount of your salary is subjected to income tax. So you are still benefiting from our adjustment. What it does though is that it benefits those who are lower income earners. So those who earn up to 3.5 million will not pay income tax on their salary because that portion of the income, which is the entirety of their income, is not subjected to income tax. But this is directed at individuals who are at the lower end of the income scale. So the majority of our public sector workers, our teachers, our police officers, members of the Jamaica Defense Force, our nurses, majority of them earn within the region of 3 million. Per annum to 3.5. Those who earn higher income will get a significantly disproportionate benefit relative to those who are at the lower end of the income scale. So our initiative is geared towards making the tax system more progressive. And with respect to financing it, I think we must also recognize that we are putting money in the hands of individuals who will spend and consume in the economy. When we reduce, I mean, at this point, when we reduce the income tax, when we lift the income tax threshold and individuals take home more money, then they will spend that money in the economy and government will be able to recover indirect taxes roughly to the tune of around $10 billion. So some of the funding needed for our adjustment to the income tax threshold will come from indirect taxes that will be generated by more consumption and more economic activity taking place in the economy. And when I look at the total cost of the GLP's proposal for all the manifesto items, it is estimated at over $115 billion. And that they need to explain to us how they will fund it.
Julia, do you have, I want you to address the overtime or policy on overtime pay too as well, and who you think it will benefit the most. And translate it in a way that people can relate to. Does it mean that I'm going to only be able to buy a Pro Box after a year? Or does it mean that I can add a room to my house? Does it mean that I can pay down some debts? Tangibly, talk to the people so that they understand what that benefit is
So
going to be.
what we're proposing is that up to $6 million that we are going to remove the tax on overtime. So there are many professions. There are policemen, there are nurses, there are some security guards. There are a lot of persons who a significant part of their income is derived from working more than the standard 40 hours per week. By removing the tax on overtime, it means that they get more money in their pocket to spend. And it could mean for somebody who has started by buying a house, a 1 or 2 bedroom, they can start to expand on that house. It means they can save to buy a car. There's more money in their pocket to do those things. So our goal is to help those working Jamaicans, our working professionals who have really had a very difficult time over the last 10 years to put more money in their hands, in their pockets. And they do it by doing so, as Cleveland said, we are stimulating economic activity. More money is going to come into the economy, which benefits the government because consumption will lead to more GCT and other related taxes. So we believe it's a win-win. We're putting more money in people's pockets, but the government gets some benefit at the end of the day. But ultimately, we want to ease the pressure on working Jamaicans by giving them a break because they have borne the sacrifices over the many years to get the country to where we are. And I just want to go back a little and remind Jamaicans as to how we started. The last PNP administration that came in 2012, we inherited an economy which was on the verge of economic collapse, where the JLP in 2011 did not even take the IMF test. They didn't even show up for the test. We had lost credibility with the international financial community. And it required the political capital of the then Prime Minister, Portia Simpson Miller, the Finance Minister, Peter Phillips, and our friends in the Congressional Black Caucus in the US who assisted us in getting a meeting with the IMF. And it took a lot of heavy lifting to re-establish that credibility. Out of that period was the establishment of EPA, which has now been succeeded by the Fiscal Commission. But importantly, we were able to bring all the stakeholders together, government, the private sector, the unions, who understood the need for sacrifice during that period. And we actually put into law this debt to GDP target. It's important to note it started under the PNP administration of Portia Simpson Miller and Peter Phillips. It continued when the JLP won in 2016. And that is why we will always be fiscally responsible as a party because we undertook the heavy lifting. We made the sacrifices. It was a painful period because we had to run very high primary surpluses in order to meet the debt to GDP target, which meant that not all the things we wanted to do, we could do. But that sacrifice is what, and the burden that was borne, we want to give back to the Jamaican people who bore that sacrifice more money in their pockets to ease the pressures that they are facing, and so that they can determine how best to use those additional resources.
Raymond, you have participated in the debates, and congratulations on your performance. You all did so amazingly well. I don't think that any fair person would not agree with me when I say that the People's National Party won all three debates in a resounding way. But I want you now to share your takeaway. What were the things that struck you about these series of debates? Of course, I would like you to focus on last night's debate because that was the highlight. 3 out of 3. When you come to the third, it's a crowning achievement. So share with us your takeaways.
The performance of yesterday's debate has created a new language in Jamaica, a motto, if you will, new PM by 1 p.m. on election day. Mr. Holness's performance was underwhelming in no uncertain terms, even for him. And I think the bar of expectation that he had of himself was even more pressuring because he would have seen the abysmal performances of his team members beginning last week, Saturday, and continuing on through to Tuesday. And perhaps he broke under the pressure of having been let down by his previous 6 speakers, in particular, the Minister of Labour and the Minister of Finance. The other thing about it is that Mark Golding came to the wicket batting knowing that he was going against some really deep seated lies told about him and attempts to rob him of his heritage. And we've all now been robbed of our heritage because when a prime minister can declare that not because you're born in Jamaica means you are Jamaican, it is really an attempt to dislocate all of us from our proud heritage and our connection to a nation family, which gives all of us our global identity. The confusion coming out of the Jamaica Labour Party about who is Jamaican and the very concept of being Jamaican didn't come as a surprise because for the first time in our history, we've had a situation where while students in Ukraine facing bombs were told that their government, through the Foreign Affairs Ministry, could not assist them, when you check the timeline, that would have been when the Minister of Foreign Affairs had first cast her eyes on the job of Secretary General for the Commonwealth. And to have been practicing a campaign to become the Secretary General of the Commonwealth while Jamaica faced all of these missed opportunities to properly negotiate for carbon credit arrangements to deal with climate change mitigation and response. When you look at all of what else was happening, one wonders how could someone born in Jamaica, committed to Jamaica as sworn in her oath of office, have been looking to fly and exit Jamaica, fly from Jamaica and exit Jamaica while on the job being paid by the taxpayer. Nigel Clark also caught a flight and flew out. So the concept of Jamaicanness being a sufficient reason to be inspired and to be enthusiastic about our future was really left to Mark Golding, which I think he proved without a shadow of a doubt that not only is he born in Jamaica, he has a concept for Jamaica, and that concept is captured in the Mission Love Manifesto. Now, I'll say quickly that one could consider the economy and the key performance indicators that Julian and Cleveland have been speaking about as a measure of the likelihood of citizens within a society being able to do well for themselves in the society of their birth. So the $3.5 million income tax threshold and the other points that have been covered by Julian and Cleveland is the first great step in allowing more Jamaicans to achieve their dreams in the land of their birth. The other great steps include unlocking significant wealth by giving Jamaicans a title to the land they have lived on in what, after the first term of the Mark Golding administration, we will describe as formerly previously informal communities, because we're going to formalize those communities by first giving titles to land in places within my own constituency, such as Lake Spen and Lilliput and Gulf and Newland and scores of other communities across all 63 constituencies. Imagine that Jamaica led by Mark Golding when the term squatter is removed from our vernacular, because in reality, we are going to create an ownership society. We also want to speak about this terrible stain that tertiary students live with, the fear that they live with, that you're qualified based on aptitude and deliberateness in studying and diligence. You matriculate to the university, and just prior to an exam period, you are deregistered. So you have people who are almost a doctor, people who are almost an architect, or almost an environmental scientist, or almost an engineer. Now, with the first in family full scholarship when Mark Golding becomes prime minister, these tertiary students can complete in comfort and freedom of mind their studies and be able, with better salaries, with special opportunities for selected professional professions, such as those teaching math, they are better able upon graduation to comfortably reinvest in the land of their birth So there again, the concept of being a Jamaican, living in Jamaica, and be able to do well for yourselves and your family in Jamaica is being achieved. And I'll touch on one other just quickly. I'm from rural Jamaica. I come from Craighead in Manchester, right? If you know Christiana, you figure out where Coleyville there, you follow Coleyville to Pike, and you go down the hill from Pike, you land at Craighead. These buses that have been procured at through unexplained mechanisms could not assist rural students from Pike, Ulster Spring, Low River, or Craighead to get to Christiana and on through to their schools. And why do I say procured in unexplained mechanisms? The way the parliament works at the start of each financial year, you have something called a throne speech, which is given by the Governor General that sets out the broad initiatives that government will pursue. Nowhere in the throne speech is a mention of a rural bus system. Nowhere in the estimates of expenditure that were passed into law in Parliament at the start of the current financial year were there any estimates or accommodations for the purchase of a rural buses for a rural bus system. Contrast that with when Prime Minister PJ Patterson determined to reinstitute a public transport system in Jamaica and reserved several of those units for carrying school children. Not only was it expressed in law by way of the estimates of expenditure, these buses were purchased brand new. They were designed with the realities of our road network in mind. And all of us, I was one of the first generation of students to benefit from that. So I appreciate the need to widen the public transport system across Jamaica, including in the hinterlands, such as I go back to Craighead. I could mention Roses Valley or Gimme Me Bit or Moko in Clarendon, for example. And that is desirable. And the PNP's RIDE program is a better offer to those Jamaicans in rural parts of the island to be able to sit comfortably as their students, their children, are being taken to the nearest point where a bigger unit can pick them up and bring them to school. The Mission Love Manifesto is not just neat because of what the acronym expresses. It reflects the thought that has gone through, led by Mark Golding and his team and the Manifesto Committee, in partnership with and dialogue with the people of Jamaica. And we look forward to your votes, your X beside the head on September 3, so that this social transformation can commence.
Well, thank you so much for raising those issues, Raymond. As I said, our manifesto is wrapped in love at all times. Now, what struck me last night, personally, uh, were not the huge things like that, which I knew our party leader had covered. I mean, amazingly covered, because he showed his capacity, his competence, his confidence, and his preparedness for the job. I found it interesting when the Prime Minister spoke to the debt to GDP ratio, because I would have anticipated that if you're running the country, then you more than anybody else, this is a ball on which you have to keep your eye. And I gasped, literally gasped in the audience, because I knew that there had been a reduction and that the release had come out and we were looking now at 62.4% at the time. But, you know, sometimes somebody does something that shows their personality in a way that, because they are unguarded. And so when the question was thrown to the Prime Minister, and then our leader started to respond, and he started the argument and interrupted, it reinforced for me that he does not understand the concept of the rule of law, that there are rules which govern all of your activities and rules by which you must comply. And so when the leader presented his birth certificate, he asked a most important question. The Prime Minister was asked, can you present me with your certification? It is an important matter.
Yes.
The Prime Minister says that his investigation has been closed by the Integrity Commission. And I suppose if you were somebody who believed in white lies, you could say, well, I'm not really too wrong, What he did not tell you was that it has been passed on to the Financial Investigation Division and also to the Tax Administration Department. That is to say that there are matters which the Integrity Commission formed the view will be best dealt with by a body which has expertise in investigating fraud. Of course, we know that after this reference was made, the job was advertised. And the job was altered. The terms, the requirements were altered to suit an applicant. I need say no more on this, but I want to just point out to you, it is not the first time that something like this has happened. And the different way in which the persons reacted tells us about character. Because when the former, I don't want to be too familiar as a Rocky Mead because he has his title, although we all call him Rocky Mead. When the former chief of defense was selected for the post of cabinet secretary, and I pointed out that it could not be considered because the Constitution required that that position be given to a public servant. The chief did not hesitate. He stepped aside because he knew that his integrity and his credibility mattered so much to him that he was not prepared to compromise it for a position. I simply contrast that with how the head of the FID has behaved. Under relentless public criticism, he has stood unmoved and unshaken. People who value certain things behave in a certain way. And I leave it there. I hope we have some online questions because I found the online questions really interesting last night. But until we do, are there any questions from
Anthony Luck from TBJ. You need a mic? All right, come use this one.
Welcome, Anthony. Thank you for joining us.
All right. Firstly, for me, can I ask you to respond to this release from the JLP just now, which states that the General Secretary condemns PNP's elements for bomb threats? Yes, in the release, Dr. Chang says it appears elements in the PNP have adopted mischievous and disruptive actions in an attempt to disrupt the voting of the security forces. I urge elements in the PNP to desist from seeking. Can I get you to respond to
This
that?
was prepared before the bomb threats were issued.
No, he does not.
I
Can I get a response to that, please?
Yeah, I saw, well, may I say this before a full response? Because a full response will have to come from the General Secretary. But I saw when that release was posted, and as somebody who grew with him granny, there is often a trait among the guilt. My grandmother's version of it was not as sophisticated as Sigmund Freud, but Sigmund Freud famously says, criminals leave clues. They have a compulsion to confess. For Dr. Chang, who is presently not only the Deputy Prime Minister, but the Minister of National Security, to make such a bizarre statement before the authorities are able to conclude any investigation
What a brilliant
speaks to a
answer.
mind that may reflect the mischief they complain about as the creator
And always
of the
depend on
mischief,
Raymond for
not
a
the one
brilliant
describing
answer.
it. It is an utterly unprofessional, below par, and reckless statement for him to have made, but it is consistent with the statements we have seen over the last 3 debates, where in the face of truth, people are able to hide behind innuendo of their own creation. and he's to be condemned for that.
All right. Thank you so much. My next question goes to you, Mr. Robinson. What do you make of the comments from former EPOC co-chair that the PNP's plans cannot work without adding taxes?
Well, I've explained in fairly extensive detail how we plan to fund it, which is that the reduction in the debt to GDP ratio, getting to 60%, as actually confirmed by the fiscal commissioner in his release, and Mr. Duncan chairs the independent fiscal council for which the fiscal commissioner is accountable. So the data from the fiscal council, which says we're going to hit 60% 2 years earlier, 2 years earlier, allows the government additional fiscal space, which we will use to implement this plan. It is sound, it can be stress tested by any economist, and it can be verified. So we are confident that we can implement this based on how the adjustment in debt to GDP and what that frees up in terms of fiscal space.
All right. And lastly, for me, despite pushback from the opposition, the government insists the school buses are ready to go come September 1. Should the PNP take office after September 3, what's next? What will happen to these buses?
I mean, the reality is that we are not against a school bus system. And I just want to make that clear. But what we have an issue with is importing buses that are 15 years old, that are left-hand drive, that are really unsuitable for narrow, windy, hilly roads. We would like a proper school bus system so we can transport our kids safely around the country. But the buses that have been imported are clearly not suitable. So we are not against a school bus system, but certainly, as my colleague said, I think in the debate, why would you import brand new garbage trucks to take up garbage, but then import 15-year-old buses to move the future of the country, our best and brightest minds? That doesn't make sense. We have already seen the buses being having issues. Bring in proper buses that can navigate the roads. We fully support that.
You know, this school bus program reminds me of one of the first acts that the Jamaica Labour Party government carried out, which was deemed an act of corruption. They imported 600 used cars for the police. Within, some of them came and started falling apart immediately. It was nothing but a scam. Up to today, after court action, the funds have still not been repaid and the cars have still not been received. This school bus program there was no procurement process was followed. It just simply came out of the blue. These buses are buses which are taken out of the system in the United States. They are retired, and they retire them because they put the safety of their children as being of paramount importance. I challenge Minister Badmind. I challenge Minister Badmind to take those buses on a tour now, before the election date. Take those buses on a tour, not just to drive down the street, but take them on a tour of every nook and cranny in Jamaica. And I am willing to say to you, they would not survive quarter of the journey. What you would expect is more tires to be shredded, although I gather now that on top of the $1.4 billion, we are spending an additional $25 million on tires.
Jesus.
By the time they take 2 hills in Prattville, half of them will be out of commission. And I dare say that if they go up to where I come from, which is Mount Providence and Woodhall, they could not even navigate that narrow road. We believe in a rural school bus program. I went to school at Clarendon College. So I understand the significance of a rural school bus program when people coming from Thompsontown and all those places, but it is not the most efficient way in some cases. And that is why the People's National Party Ride program is far more effective. Because you can't have 4 people coming from Smithville and you send a bus up there to go and pick them up. It is not sensible. and it needs a mix of solutions. This rural school bus program, you just mark my word. Within a few months, Jamaica will see it for exactly what it is.
Sorry, Senator.
No, well, clearly, there are some places where it can be used. We don't expect it to last 15 years because our situations are different. If you're driving in Florida, you're not going to drop in a pothole every 2 minutes. No, we are not going to discard it because that will be waste. And we as a party, we do not embrace waste. We take decisions which are well thought out and well implemented. So, yes, we would use it where it's feasible. We are just not going to endanger our children, their safety, and their
I don't
security
agree with
by
that, Donna Scott
sending those
Buckley.
school buses in areas where they
All
ought not to
rules,
be.
all
And I
rules
just want to
must be
say one
used.
last thing. We have never advocated left hand drive vehicles in Jamaica. Our drivers are not trained to drive left hand drive vehicles in Jamaica. We
Darrell, stop playing with the internet, no? Darrell Vaz, leave the internet. Keep people them talk about the dollar bus them. Up to Darrell Vaz and in dollar bus. It will soon come back up globalist. It's internet on there and Darrell Vaz now on the party have to come out. Them jam
don't
the
want to let Ordwin out in. And these are just some of the reasons which makes this decision a poor decision. Anthony, in Clarendon in 2013, the People's National Party started a rural school bus program because there were concerns about the behavior of the children on the buses. You know how that goes. And there was concerns for their safety and their security consequently. It was not stopped by the People's National Party. It is this administration that decided in 2020 that they would abandon it. So yes, we are committed to a rural school bus program. And yes, we will make the best use possible of these yellow school buses.
I want to say, just to tag something onto what Senator has said to your question. What of the Island Traffic Authority? I mean, the rum bath aside, we saw the minister pouring what appeared to be rum on the buses. The rum and the minister do not do certificate of fitness. They cannot suffice for it being properly checked. There are policies advanced by the JLP administration that prevents cut vehicles from being imported. If they have cut the other side of the bus to install a door, that point becomes a weak point. The collision. That's one. Two, the recent changes to the Road Traffic Act would make those buses unfit for our roads just on the interpretation of the act. Let's give an example. The buses being so long can't go around a hairpin corner, such as the ones that would have to take you up from Balaclava to Roses Valley without you having to reverse. Driving a Pajero or a Prado around some of those corners, you still have to reverse. If you're driving a left-hand vehicle, reversing in Jamaica, where we drive on the left, physics and logics confirm that you would have had to put at risk somebody coming behind you driving in the left lane. It was poorly thought through, and I go back to where I began on the matter. In this country, a parliamentary democracy, when a government is spending to the tune of 1.4 and more billion dollars, it ought to be expressed in the estimates of expenditure, which simply means in April there had been no plan, no intention, and no budgetary allocation for the procurement of one of those buses, let alone the 100 buses. And I would invite you and others to call the Island Traffic Authority to ask them whether or not they have reviewed either the retrofitted buses or the buses that were imported. And upon their review, have there been any issue of certificate of fitness or the equivalent that says to you as a parent, this bus is safe for my child?
Well, thank you very much, those of you who have joined in. I want to address one last point, Julian, and that is something that I saw on X, formerly Twitter. I don't know why we still say formerly Twitter, but it was in relation to a comment that our leader made about Member of Parliament Juliet Hones. Now, the way that it has been spun is that he was wrong to speak about the Prime Minister's wife. Politics is for people who are accustomed to a sport. It's a sport. It's not a tea party. If you want to remain outside of the public scrutiny, then you should remain in a position of a wife. Once you determine that your husband, being prime minister, you want to become a member of the parliament, and then having succeeded at that, you take on the position as speaker. That is now your husband holds the highest position in the executive, and you hold the highest position in the legislature. You have opened up yourself to being held to account in the way that any other politician will be. So it's not that you're no longer simply, and I use simply advisedly because being a wife means that you're part of a family, you're a unit. But once you do that and you're a politician, you must appreciate that people are free and indeed will point to conflicts of interest because they will arise. You have a choice. This is something that you did, thinking about it and deciding that this was where you wanted to be. So respectfully to all those, to the MP whose tweet I noticed, yes, your family is off limit. Your husband and your child is definitely off limit. Everybody should respect that. I endorse that comment. But politicians are not off limit. And their conduct, it must be held up to scrutiny. It must be transparent and it must be accountable. And you must set your example by abiding by the rule of law. So thank you all very much. Thank you, Julian. I know you're busy campaigning, but I think that all that's set already. Thank you, Cleveland. Thank you, Raymond. It's just a pleasure to be with all these amazing men up here. So see you again soon.
You have heard it. You have heard the press conference. We're not going to have much to say because I will leave my program I had planned for tonight.
Accelerate your due diligence with Drooms. Handle high-stakes transactions.
My program I had planned for tonight, I will leave it for tonight. We were just out here to rebroadcast the press conference. But have you started looking for new citizenship and new rights? Is there a coincidence that we were treated in that way as Jamaicans during the pandemic because we are not really Jamaicans? That and more we will discuss this evening when we come back on the People's Point of View. So thank you all very much for being here with us at this short notice to bring the People's National Party press conference to you, bringing clarity. But let me just say this before I go. I disagree with Donna Scott Motley on one area, that we will make use of the old bosses, the dollar bosses, them where necessary. I don't think they should be used at all except for Foal Cub, Agpen, corner shop, or a little restaurant on the street corner. I think those are perfect use. Or we can also use them for staff rooms on some school ground. Other than that, literally, I don't see where we should put road users at risk with any of these paradigms. Thank you. And please do join us back later for the People's Point of View. And make sure you try find yourself a new nationality, because your birth certificate alone is not enough. Thank you and good afternoon. Good morning on the Eastern Timeline.
If you don't like missing out on the latest shows but still enjoy classic hits, then Global TV Group 358 is your perfect match. Global TV Group 358 isn't just another channel, it's your ultimate TV experience. From breaking news to binge-worthy dramas and timeless classics, we've got it all. Our unique blend of original content and global favorites means there's something for everyone. And guess what? With GTVG's seamless streaming, you can watch anywhere, anytime. Plus, our interactive features let you be part of the action. So, whether you're a seasoned binge watcher or a casual viewer, Global TV Group 358 is here to keep you entertained day and night. Don't just watch TV, experience it with Global TV Group 358. Subscribe now and never miss a moment.